Hello, 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 hello. Come on in, come on in, come on in.
Oh, wow.
I want to welcome you to Olalus Podcast. My name is Lorna, and I'm going to be your host for this evening. And I am joined with a whole panel of very good-looking, but most importantly, very intelligent and capable group of people.
Welcome to Olalus Podcast, where real stories come to life. Broadcasting from the tri-state area, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey. We're just one stop away from the DMV, bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations that matter. At Olalus Podcast, we bridge cultures and communities, connecting people from all backgrounds and walks of life.
This evening, we're going to be discussing a topic that we probably would not have even touched on maybe 30 or 40 years ago, and that is going to be individuals with intellectual disabilities and the families who support them. So I want to start by asking all of my panelists to introduce themselves and tell us how you professionally or personally are coming in contact with individuals with intellectual disabilities. So we'll start with Abdul.
All right. Thank you very much. And a big thank you to the Olalus Entertainment Group and Podcast. My name is Abdul Tall. I'm the CEO of First Choice Home and Community Services. We provide foster care services as well as group home for young children. So currently we have a certified home for 10 boys. And we also have programs for out-of-home placement for children in our communities. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Fatima.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Fatima Dumbuya. I am. I've been in the IDD field for well over 25 years, working anywhere from direct support professional to upper management and quality assurance. So that's my professional. I also have some clinical background as a licensed BCBA. But more personally, I actually also have a son that has some intellectual disability and mental health. So I'm dealing with it from both angles, as a parent and as a professional. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Olalus.
Happy to have you. Happy
Thank
to have
you.
you. Dr. Amber.
Hi, my name is Amber Samaru, and I've been in this field for almost 40 years.
Nice.
And I provide a wide range of service, from behavior service to educational service, not nursing service. And this topic is very complex. And we too have a child with some disability. It's kind of funny. We have a genius and a disabled child.
Absolutely. That's how it tends to work.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Ember, let me ask you this. Before we really get into the subject, I'm going to ask that you give us some history on intellectual disability, autism, how that language has changed, just so that our listeners really know what we're talking about. What are we talking about?
Wow. That's a loaded question.
It
so
is.
we went from
doctor.
Yeah. We went from calling people retarded, from mental retardation to intellectual disability. And in between that, we had DDD, which was developmental disability. And our diagnostic category had now moved from that to pervasive developmental. So they keep changing the words, making them sound nicer. But the bottom line is what it is, right? And we do need to call it for what it is, because that's the only way we can get treatment. Recently, over the last couple of years, it even got better, where autism then separated itself from intellectual disability, because people were putting them all in the same category. And, we're preaching to the choir here. We all know that they're different.
Right.
And we all know autistic children are different than regular developmental disability children, right? And their presentation is different and their functioning is different. So this is the evolution. I was talking with Fatima earlier. And when I first started in this racket, we had base service unit. We didn't have contracting unit. We didn't have Olalus. We had these base service unit, and we had Elwin, we had Woods, we had Jebs, RHD. These were like the big companies that just took everyone. And so as you can see the evolution, how now you take RHD, right? They have now separated to mental health, to old age,
Right.
like seniors,
Right.
right? So then they have a separate section altogether, which is outpatient counseling, right? You take some of these traditional agencies are not taking our guys anymore.
What kind of services do these agencies provide?
Well, they provide residential counseling. They provide the same services that we all do, but they are not taking new clients.
Right.
Okay.
And they specialize.
So people coming into the system now they're out of the racket.
So it sounds like we may be facing a crisis as far as receipt for individuals with intellectual disabilities receiving services.
Yes. So there's we just took a young man all the way from God knows where, Pennsylvania. Now if he had services in his community, he wouldn't end up all the way here with us.
Okay. I want to delve more into that a little bit later. But first I want to ask Fatima. Fatima, you mentioned that you have a child that has a intellectual disability diagnosis.
Not an intellectual necessarily.
Okay.
ADHD and some mental health things going on there. But I also have, before he was formally diagnosed, was also looking at some intellectual disability. Like you said, their brains are different. They grow up differently than a normal developmental child. Officially, on paper, not intellectual disabilities, but as a mother, you see it.
How
right?
old is your child?
He's 17.
17.
He's
Wow,
17.
so that's a long
So
journey.
it's been 17 years of advocacy.
Okay.
17 years of fights with the school districts.
Yes.
For 501(c)(3) plans.
Yes.
17 years of the IEPs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell us, you mentioned a 501(c)(3) plan. Tell us about that. What is that?
So these are plans that, just like the IEPs, where you, it's a specialized program for your child. It's every school district, America, right, is free education, free public education for everyone. So every school have to have some sort of supports for the children, regardless of disability, color, regardless of anything. So these are specialized individual educational plan is what it's called, an IEP, that specialize on services and supports that the child will need in the school. It is the law, it is mandated, and a lot of school districts deviates from that. They will have it on paper, but what is practiced every day, it is not that. So for instance, a child may need support to be removed from the classroom during testing. A child may need, specialized headphones to, if they have sensory issues, to be able to adapt in a classroom with the regular peers. Again, we're moving away from segregating them, right? We want to include them. Right. Inclusion. It's all about inclusion. It's all about bringing them in to a normal and fair education. So a lot of the times, a lot of our educators are not, I will say some of them are educated enough, but a lot are not educated in the IDD world, where instead of working to include these children, they're like just turned off. Your teacher will, you're giving too much problem, or you're getting in and out of your seats many times. So they're not paying attention to, they like wipe them off.
Right.
So as parents with these children, it is our job to sit with these students and sit with the school and fight and make sure that they're getting the services that they need.
Right, right.
It's a battle. It's a battle. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
But it's a battle.
So I want to get down to the nitty gritty.
Uh-huh.
Let me adjust myself. So you mentioned that it is a battle. So, as a family of color, were you born in the United States of America?
I was not. I was born in Germany, but yeah,
Okay.
I grew up here.
Okay.
Since, like,
So, as
I was
a
5.
person of color and a person who has immigrated to this country, do you find that battle to be any more difficult because of those factors and maybe our white counterparts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I will say what the barriers are is education on what your rights are, right? It's, and I was talking to someone in DFS actually today about another case and something similar. And I'm just like, as much as research that I do and educate myself and try to advocate for my kid, imagine, it can be white, you can be black, you can be orange. If you're a family that don't know or have a slightest clue as to how to go about to even get your son an IEP or your daughter an IEP, it's a barrier.
Right.
You know, so I don't think it's about skin color. I think it's about more education and access to the resources.
Okay. I have my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
before I express my thoughts, and Dr. Amber, I hear that you have some thoughts on it as well, and I want to get into that. But before we go there, I want to segue, and I want to ask Abdul a question. Hey, Abdul, you looking good over there. You looking like you ready for a question.
Of course.
Okay. So you'd mentioned that you run a group home for children.
Group home for children,
Okay.
as well as a foster care program.
Okay. And so I would assume that through your business practices, you have run into some children that have diagnoses of that neurodivergent diagnosis, whether they be ADHD, autism,
Autistic,
mental health. Do you find that those children are harder to find services for, placement for, or would you say that?
Yes. Over the past years, we've seen an increase in children with autism coming into our program. And a lot of our parents that are in the communities, they don't have that, they're not equipped in terms of the training resources in order to care for these children. Okay, they were accustomed to accepting referrals for children that have maybe ADHD or ADD and those kind of stuff. But when it comes to autism, it's quite different. There are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of needs, and it comes with a lot of patience.
Yes.
In terms of dealing with those kind of kids. So we've had that challenge, but over the years with trainings and other resources that have been put in place, also we have funding from the counties in terms of providing outside trainings and experts in those areas to help train our foster parents to be able to be ready to accept placements for children that have autism.
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
But the challenge is there.
Yes.
From my background, I've worked, with children with MR. Like the doctor said, we don't use MR.
We don't use that anymore.
But, there's a saying that, what you call people is how you treat people.
Exactly.
So, they move away from those words. But when it comes to individuals with intellectual disabilities and families, when families have their child in placement, you got to look at it from different perspectives. How they want that child to be treated.
Absolutely.
When it comes to their rights, knowing their rights and how they are treated in these, it could be residential home, it could be a placement service, it could be, it could be in a setting. But knowing their rights and knowing what kind of services, like what Fatima said, educating them on, how to advocate for services that they need.
Yes.
Reaching out to your SCOs, your support coordination units, so that they can be able to, maybe there's a need for prioritization of units, that's going to help that child. So just knowing what to advocate for as a parent is important.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a good piece that you talked about. Yeah.
To piggyback on what you said, and I think you guys talked about it earlier, is seeking the services for the people that are coming in to service. You mentioned taking a young man from, I don't know, Western Pennsylvania or whatever, how far it was. But I know for sure in our field, to be able to get into residential, you need a consolidation waiver, right? And with that waiver in Pennsylvania, there's a 5-year waiting list
Yes.
to even be approved for the waiver. Then you have to find a provider that will take you. So imagine I'm a parent that had this child for how many years. I can't physically and mentally take care of them anymore based on
I don't have to imagine.
their needs, based on their needs. And then I'm being told by an SEO or someone that, oh, you need to wait 5 years to be approved for funding.
Right. Right. I mean, full disclosure, I have a 16-year-old child with an IDD and autism diagnosis, and he right now resides in one of the residential programs. So that's why I said I don't have to imagine, and I can 100% relate to Abdul, what you were saying about parents and the care that they want for their children, and how these parents I'm these parents want for their children to be treated. So Dr. Amber, back to you. When I asked the question about whether or not we think we see a disparity in the availability for treatment and other services amongst or across racial lines and cultural lines, you very quickly said no. You want to delve into that one?
Well, so my experience is that our youngest daughter has some disability. She eventually went to college and did a degree in fashion design, right? The problem is that the stress of that industry. And not to tell her story, and then she went to baking school and became a pastry chef. If she can see it, she can do it. But if you, like how we're having this conversation, she'll be like, go on, right? She'll be here taking copious notes of what we're talking about so she can answer your questions. So from the time she was little, now remember this, I know better.
Right.
But being a parent,
Right.
my denial system was she'll be okay. She'll, So the earliest you can get children diagnosed and understanding, I know this. This is not new information. And I'm preaching to the choir again. Early intervention, right?
Right.
So the faster your children can integrate. Rebecca was in some self-contained class until she went to high school. We also provided a tutoring. She had tutoring almost all of her little school years, a couple of days a week. And that's just to keep her not ahead,
Right.
but abreast.
Right.
But let me answer your question. So my wife looks like nobody in this room. My wife is Caucasian. So my daughter, however, this one is darker. This one darker as me. But she has to fight with the school to get my child services. And then it wasn't until she was probably 7 or 8 that we learned about sensory integration. Right? Now, I've been in this racket for a while. Shit. I've never heard the damn word.
Right.
Right? It is like, it's like these things now they bring in, which is these BSPs,
Right,
behavior
right.
support plan. We've been doing behavior support plan forever.
Right.
Right? But then they change the names around. They call them all kind of funky stuff. They call them,
Scene.
an
Behavioral
assessment
modification
before you can do a
plan.
plan, which is fine.
Right.
Christ, we've been doing it for 40 years.
Right.
But people change the names around.
Right.
And then they start. When I grow up, I'm going to be a plumber in my next life. But I want to be able to break stuff down like that and then you can make a shitload of money. And all you're doing is rephrasing stuff we've been doing, right? So to answer your question, you got to fight for things that you should be getting. And, listen, we live in Haddon Township, and we were just talking about our taxes. It's a great school system, but even in that system, inequities are incredible, all right? Whereas you just have to keep fighting. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you guys this. At every point, Christine had to fight and fight and fight to get what our child deserved, according to the law.
Right.
Again, I didn't know what a
3
program was until
IEP.
Yeah, I didn't know those things.
So what I hear you saying, Dr. Amber, is that the fight exists regardless.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so let me just sprinkle something on that. So the fight exists, and then let's just add coming from a marginalized group of people, or let's add having an accent, or let's add coming from a culture that really demarginalizes people that have. I'm asking for a reason, Dr. Amber. I see you smiling. Stop smiling at me now. Coming from a culture that really demarginalizes people with intellectual disability or any disability, do you see that playing a part at all in receiving those services?
So I saw it in our own lives, right? So when I was like the big bad doctor, right, I realized that there was no hope here. But once Christine got involved, then there was lots of services open for her. So I can't imagine what it's like for people who are not Caucasian to get services and to get good services, and to even be educated as to where to go find services.
To my point, right.
Right?
Yep.
So as Fatima had mentioned earlier, it's about education of getting services.
Yeah.
And then once you learn how to get the service, then the struggle starts.
Exactly.
Right? To go get them and learn about child study team and learn about, right?
So you first have to know they exist before you can even fight with them, right?
And they exist. Every school system, they exist.
Right.
In Philadelphia system, the teacher is the case manager of the children.
Right.
And she has to do the assessments and all this kind of stuff. Real antiquated assessment, by the way,
right,
of tools.
So to piggyback on that, one thing that, as an advocate that I see a lot of families go through is the turnaround for services, right? So you will go, for instance, in Delaware, we have PBH, Prevention Behavioral Health.
Okay.
You go to PBH for services. They're supposed to provide supports, outpatient supports. PBH will turn you to DFS, Department of Family Services. DFS will turn you back to PBH to talk to a case manager. And then PBH will get you to crisis. It is just a ring around. Everybody, no one wants to take ownership.
Right.
So if I'm a family that is not educated on the systems or to where to even go, and on top of that, you're dealing with the everyday, constant
care.
Thank you for that word. Of a child.
Right.
It is. It's stressful.
So, Abdul, Fatima had mentioned, what is it called in Delaware?
DFS is
DFS.
Division of Family Services.
Okay.
And PBH is Prevention Behavioral Health.
Okay.
So that's for more of the behavioral health.
Abdul, where are you stationed? Which state are you in? Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But
so what do we here in Pennsylvania? What do we call our child services?
Office
programs?
of Children, Youth, and Families.
Okay.
OCYF.
Okay.
Yeah. So we deal with OCYF. Now, just to piggyback on what the doctor was saying, I think sometimes it's mainly about pooling resources. Okay. So if you have different service providers, for example, like the school districts, right? Like what we've experienced. We have children coming from the Philadelphia school district,
right,
coming into Delaware County,
right.
Okay, so that's a different kind of transfer. So when we have these kids coming over, and if they have IEP, let's say they come in with an IEP, So the Delaware County School Districts, they have a difficult time accepting those kids, and they have no choice.
Right.
But because we know that we have an advocate to make sure that they accept them in the school district, we were able to have them placed in various schools within Delaware County.
Okay.
But it was when we started first, it was a hassle. It was pooling, and we can't take them, or they can be registered in the school district. They have to go.
Right.
We can transport kids from Delaware County to Philadelphia County every day to go to school.
Right.
That's where they reside, so they have to go to school where they reside.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's about pooling resources and
Okay.
not wanting to do it. And if you don't know your rights,
Right.
then they'll take advantage of you.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, just again, speaking as a woman of color, it's difficult for me not to do that because I am a woman of color. So,
And we're in Black
It's
History
real.
Month.
absolutely,
We're in Black
yes,
History Month,
we're coming to the end of Black History Month. So
that-
I want to stick to that topic.
Put that on there. I'm
So,
joking.
as a black woman, I come from a culture. I kind of mentioned this before, Dr. Amber. I come from a culture where we're not just openly and willingly accept with parents, or even if we're talking about foster parents. So, what is it that we can do as professionals to kind of like bridge that gap for anybody that's coming from any type of a culture that has a different? Let's just be realistic. Anybody that's not of our white counterpart, I think that most people of color have a difficult time, just grappling with that. What can we do to bridge that for parents?
I mean, from my experience, I don't want to think it's a race issue. From my
But
experience.
I do. Yeah. I want to talk about culture.
I think it's more of education, knowing where to go.
So you don't feel like there's any type of cultural disparity there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I've experienced that. I have parents that have experienced that in the past when I used to do IDD, right? But with coming over to dealing with young children and dealing with foster parents, dealing with biological parents as well, they are receiving services that they need,
Right.
in the foster care system. But the issue is, I mean, even though they cannot take care of their own biological children, they tend to put more demands on agencies that are providing services. So it's not. I don't think it's about, from my perspective, I don't think it's about race.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
So for me, I kind of see that if we want to go cultural, right? A lot of, and my parents are from Sierra Leone, West Africa.
Okay.
So a lot of us Africans, it's like, and even in Sierra Leone, there's no children there. There are children there with intellectual disabilities and autism and things, but it's not prevalent because everybody is ashamed.
Yeah, the denial.
You're in denial.
Right.
You can't, for your child to have a disability.
Yes.
So a lot of the families that are here in the diaspora in America and have children of such, it is still that stigma and that shame of having your child out in public. I can't tell you enough how much it gets under my skin when I'm at these African parties and I see the parents. I can clearly see. I walk around now trying to diagnose people's children, and I try not to.
Listen,
but I do that all the
happens.
time.
It
I'm just
happens.
but then for the mom and the parents to just go bizarre at these parties or just do, and I'm just like, no, it's okay. I'll be the one here. Let me talk to them. Let me take them. Let me, But it's kind of shameful in our culture.
In this
And
culture,
it's lack
too.
of education.
I think it's
In
most
this
cultures
piece,
that
In this-
of cultures
Yeah.
of color. And so and that's why I keep pushing the issue, because I want us to be real. I feel like if we don't address that, then children who look like us will not receive the services that they truly need.
Right.
So
Yeah, but you see,
we can
if
address the
you-
parents that accept it all day long.
Denial,
Go ahead,
you're not
Abdul.
going to go.
You're not gonna
you're
get
not
services.
Right.
Yes.
So what I want to know from my panel of professionals is how can we bridge that for these caretakers? What can we do to help them to step out of this denial as people of color who are also professionals and also have a personal side to the situation.
Well,
Dr. Amber?
That has two sides of that coin. In that, one of the things that we know and is published in research is that black boys are diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder 7 times more than white boys in the inner city, right?
Yes.
In the suburbs, it is 6 times more.
Right.
So they have just a little bit more of a chance out in the suburbs of diagnosed with right? However, because they're acting out and the behavioral issue of moving and can't sit still and, that's why they get those kind of diagnoses.
Right.
However, they're not being properly diagnosed.
Right.
You see? Because again, I think you're hitting something very important about cultural issues.
Yes.
And people not quite understanding the concept of early diagnoses, come back. Diagnoses drives, you know this, you're a nurse, right? So diagnoses drive medication.
Absolutely.
It's not the other way around.
Right.
So diagnoses drive treatment.
Right.
So if we can diagnose them early, we can treat them early.
Right.
If we can treat early, we can get better results later on. So we don't.
I see you. Fatima is burning over there. She has something on her mind.
She's ready to testify. So we don't. You see,
That's the point.
it's a nasty cycle, right? So we don't have to worry about destroying the black man,
Right.
because the black boy is already done,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? So if we can diagnose them early, no disrespect, right? Then we can treat and intervene early.
Absolutely.
And that's when parents are most receptive for treatment.
Right. Yeah.
Yes,
I hear
because
you.
they want the help,
Right.
right? But when your child is now 22 years old
Absolutely.
looking for a group home,
Right.
by then the parents are burnt out.
And you know what they'll find instead of a group home is a jail cell.
Well, that's a different story
Whole
altogether.
different story.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of parents saying that they don't want their child to have a diagnosis. They don't want their child to have the stigma of the diagnosis. And my response to that is, we all carry stigmas and we all carry titles. I would rather my child have a title of IDD or autism than inmate number 100277135.
And then his life is screwed because he can't get a job because he has a background.
Absolutely. Fatima, you were
Yeah,
simmering. What you want to
I
say?
Yeah,
I
she was dying over there.
So Doctor had a good point about medication. So another part of cultural disparities, right? In the African community, we don't do psychotropics.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We don't. If a child is prescribed a psychotropic medication, it is a stigma.
Yeah.
So the parents themselves don't believe. They'll rather go back home and do whatever. They'll do some remedies. They'll do, and the child is suffering. And I will say, I was that parent. My son has ADHD. For years in elementary school, the teachers, he's just ornery, he's running around, and I was anti-medication for quite some time. Quite some time, until when he got to middle school, and I'm like, this kid is actually suffering. It's not only about the behaviors, but it's also about, so it takes something as small as guanfacine or something little to calm them and put them, get them together. Right? So.
I mean, even in the African culture, even if the child's diagnosed and they prescribe medication, they won't give that medication.
They won't take it.
They won't give it.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe
They don't believe in medications. And it's all about education.
So it's just about education.
It's sad.
So I would say it has a lot to do with education, and I think for my culture, it also has to do with experience, because we're coming from a place of being we are all coming from a place of being experimented on. Let's just be real. But we're coming from a place of being proven to have been experimented on. So I think in the African American community and culture, we have a distrust of medical providers anyway. They haven't always been kind to us. So now you want to put my child on a medication, mind-altering medication.
Yeah.
So as a nurse, I struggle with that. Just trying to get make sure that the education is there, and just get families on board.
Because sometimes they that's what they need. You know, as much as we don't like it, sometimes that's what they need to keep them. Because again, as we know, like example, I speak ADHD because I've done a lot of research on it. It's a chemical imbalance, right? It's their executive function, not function. It overflows. It produces a lot of
too much happening,
too much energy, too much. You know, so you just need an all natural, I don't know, melatonin or whatever to kind of keep them back to that regular functioning as a normal child.
You know, I find that in our system, the adult system, the more I can engage with parents, you know, I let them know what's happening with their son. Because that's, right. Let them know what's happening with their son and keep them informed with meetings and have their sons connect with them.
Right.
At morning and at night. You know, they have a tendency of calling all day. Right. So if we can structure that morning and night, they get they have a sense of what's going on with their children as well, especially in foster care. Right? I mean, they're little, they can't even advocate for themselves. In our system, we're in the adult system, right? So our guys can advocate for themselves. Those children cannot.
Yeah, but you see, sometimes with the foster care system, most times you find the foster parents advocating for evaluations. Because sometimes they don't come in with evaluation.
They don't come in with the diagnosis.
So, they don't come in with the diagnosis. So, we have different levels of care. Okay. So, they come in as a general level or a therapeutic level if they have evaluations and so forth.
Right.
Or a specialized behavioral health level.
Right.
But, you know, based on the interaction with the child, you can advocate for, listen, this child looks like, you know, they need some kind of evaluation.
Okay.
The school's complaining, he's not sitting in class, you know, he's moving a lot around, you know. So based on those observations, then they can request for an evaluation to be done. Yeah, but most times we find people, you know, parents advocating, you know, child needs to be evaluated. We put that in the court order and the child gets evaluated.
So Abdul, what would you say to that mother who's at her wit's end, that's battling with that child that may or may not have that diagnosis yet, that she just really doesn't feel like she can take care of anymore? That mother that, you know, we hear about about mothers like leaving. I think it was like maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. It was a mother that like left her child by the creek in a chair. Do you guys remember that? Remember hearing about that? So what do you say to that mother that's 2 minutes away from leaving her child in a chair by the creek?
Well, I mean, before they get into care or what, you know.
They're at home. Either way, either they're receiving services or they're not receiving services.
Yep. She's tired.
She's tired.
Well,
she's tired.
Well, if she's burned out,
yes,
okay, they get burned out. Because sometimes most of the kids that come in the foster care, they're from teen mothers that don't know much, you know.
Right.
13, 14, 15.
Wow.
They come, you know, they have babies and so forth. So they don't know much about, you know, having a child. They're not educated on that. So that changes everything about them. Right. Now they have this newborn baby. They don't know what to do.
Right.
Okay. So it takes maybe the biological parents or the school counselor. It takes anybody that's involved with that child to let them know that, okay, even though you find yourself in this situation, but there's help out there. They have help out there for you to put your child in care. If you don't have family support system in place, the child can be placed into foster care. They can get the best of care. So it takes education, you know, educating our young people.
Yeah.
We have some adults that are on drugs. We see kids that are coming into care that a lot of times I get calls from the hospital for crack babies, and, you know, and so forth. But it takes education.
Yeah.
You know, rather than leaving that child by the creek, you know, you can call DHS. Take the child to DHS.
Right.
You know, they'll find a place for them.
Yeah.
They'll put the child in a shelter. They'll find a foster home for the child.
Yep. Right. Yes, Fatima, what do you have? what you want to tell that mama, honey?
I keep interjecting. So yes, call DHS.
Yes.
And I will speak for Delaware. A lot of times when families are tired and they call DFS, say, I can no longer knowingly take care of this child. I don't have parental control over this child. DFS will file charges on that parent for either abandonment or negligent. It is the saddest thing, and that's how the law is. Regardless if the parent is crying for help, I can no longer take care of this child. I am not able to. They will take you to court and file charges for abandonment if that child is under 18.
Yeah, and that's a scary place to be in. You're in a rock and a hard place.
I've worked with families where that had happened, and that is the law in Delaware. I don't know about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's the same
But
thing.
Same thing in New Jersey.
It's the same thing. They'll file
But-
an order of protective custody.
Yeah,
And they'll take that.
and they'll take
And
custody.
now it's too late to take it back. You can't now say, no, I didn't mean it.
Right, but at the same
Well,
time,
they still
maybe
have a
you do
chance.
mean it. Maybe
they still have a
maybe
chance.
you just can't. Maybe you just cannot
Right.
take care of this person. You're not equipped enough. You don't have the resources in your home.
Yeah, but the thing is, for Pennsylvania, right? So let's look at the same scenario, right? They can't take care of the child. They call DHS. DHS takes the child. They
And they file charges
They
on
get
the
an
parent.
OPC, for that child. But that parent is still involved with that child because rights are not terminated.
Right.
Right,
Right.
right.
Rights
right.
are not terminated.
Right.
So they'll have to go to court. And there's something called the Family Service Plan, FSP. So they'll give you an FSP, tell you, okay, listen, you have housing issues, you have drug and alcohol issues, you have domestic violence in your home, go back, we'll give you 6 months, fix it, come back, and they'll have, hearings here and there to see how that FSP, whether they're achieving their FSP goals at that point.
So what if they don't have any of those things in their home? What if they are just your run-of-the-mill working parent that's trying to, just provide for a child that's difficult to provide for in a home setting?
Well, what happens is when they do that OPC, the Order of Protective Custody, they'll assign you with a lawyer. They'll assign that parent with a lawyer.
Okay.
So they have lawyers that will advocate for them. So there are services within the counties. If you need drug and alcohol counseling, you can get counseling. You can get housing. If you have housing issues, they'll refer you, to see if they can help you with housing and so forth. So there's a lot of help out there, that it gives.
Is there really, Abdul?
Yeah,
is
there
there
is,
really?
there is.
It sounds like we might need to do better.
So let's say for example, right? If you have parenting issues,
Okay.
right, they will send you to there's a place in Philadelphia
Okay.
that help you with your parenting skills.
Okay.
Okay, it's called AIC, Achieving Independence Center for young children, for young youth that are between the ages of 13, 18. They'll go there, learn life skills, learn other things that will help them. Right. So there's a lot of help out there.
Okay.
In Delaware, I know they have the PIC, the Parent Information Center, and that's where they do have advocates that help families navigate the system and find resources within the community. So and these are free advocates. They'll go and sit at your IEP meetings. So for any parent that's out there that doesn't know how to navigate, just go to your county assistance office and ask for a Parent Information Center. They will help you navigate education system. They'll help you navigate mental health supports or outpatient, counseling, therapy, or whatever, or drug and alcohol. But so the resources are out there. It's navigating them and
It's navigating
knowing,
it, absolutely.
And
I'm standing by my guns, and I'm going to say that although they're out there, I don't think that there are enough to serve this growing population.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're really focusing on enough on supporting the family that's supporting these individuals.
Yes, that's true.
yeah. Absolutely, I agree
the
with
money
that.
is just not there. That's
I
a
agree
topic
with
for
that.
another day.
I agree with that.
But the money is just not there. Dr. Amber, what do you say? What do you say to that mother?
That mother in New Jersey is not going to make it out of the hospital. And that mother in New Jersey is going to get charged. Because let's assume let's take that child that you mentioned earlier that was born with
yes, they get charged.
with let's say drug addicted, right? So if you want to be now here we go, full circle. If you want to have a child that's drug addicted or alcohol addicted with fetal alcohol syndrome, you want a fetal alcohol syndrome child, right? That child is the drug addictive child. The fetal alcohol child is going to end up with so much neurological problem, he'll end up in our group homes. Whereas the drug addictive child is going to withdraw and then will be healthy. That mother then is charged in New Jersey because the hospitals have to report her, right? And that's when the family plan comes into effect. And then she has to do all these things or not. And if she does them, most of the time she's fine.
Right.
The court dropped the charges and she gets on.
Reunified. Yeah.
And right. Right. But, this is a hell of a topic.
I know, it's so deep.
It's
deep,
we could go on all night.
This is
Unfortunately,
this is a hell of a topic.
we don't
because,
have all night.
Yeah, and in our adult system, Abdul, we now see the residual of years of neglect, right, of these guys that we serve and their family. So by the time I'm talking to a family in upstate Pennsylvania, a mom in upstate Pennsylvania who had to have two of her daughters removed from her home because her son was so violent, right? She's fried. She's exhausted, right? So her thing is my son safe?
Yep.
That's her main thing. Is my son safe, right? And now with Skype, she can see him, right? Or Google Duo, right? She doesn't just talk with him. She can see him on the phone, right? Our big thing now is to learn to teach both ends to separate. The mom got to separate and the son has to separate. That's the hard part of what we are doing when we have somebody come into our home that's brand new. I can't imagine with a teenager that's coming into one of your program and taking from his mom and dad.
That's one of the trainings.
My God.
Separation and loss. Talk about that separation issue that they face when they come into care.
Yeah,
That's another big piece.
How do you teach somebody to deal with that?
Yes.
But again, we don't have all night.
Yeah, we don't have all night.
We don't have all night, but I hope that we all can reconvene and speak more on this topic. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much. I learned a lot tonight.
Same.
It came with a lot of great insights. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us this evening. Does anybody have anything they feel like they want to say in closing? It's such a big topic. No? All right then. So
Fabulous.
Keep fighting.
yes,
Yep.
There you go.
absolutely.
Keep
That's
fighting.
what I want to say to the tired mom. Keep fighting.
Keep fighting.
And educating people.
Yes.
That's very important.
That's a big piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because most people don't know where to go find resources, right? It's not that they don't want to help themselves,
Right.
and then you have to work to not stigmatize people
Yeah.
and victimize
too.
them again, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they have a hard enough time with
Right.
services, getting service,
Right.
asking for service.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well,
That
thank
was
you
great.
so much
Thank
again
you.
to the panelists, and thank you to the listeners. Have a great evening.
Have a good night.
Beautiful.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.